All right, let's get going. As we look into business presentation this morning, I want you to hopefully have a notepad close by to you so that I can take you through the process of developing a presentation, and hopefully this will be useful in ensuring that your presentations going forward are going to be valuable and possibly much more invested in the audience. Again, as I mentioned to the previous delegates, as we look into this, this is just one chapter out of a full business presentation course that we run at JHJ Training, and hence I'm hoping that you at least get a head start into what you could do, perhaps in preparation for your next presentation that you may have to do online. Having said that, I want to ask you to contribute from the chat box. What is that makes you feel challenged when it comes to business presentation skills? What is your biggest challenge when it comes to business presentations or public speaking in general? Maybe you can use the chat box to type in what your greatest challenge would be. Fear. Thank you, Philip. Any other contributions? What are your greatest challenges when it comes to business presentations or public speaking in general? Could it be just fear? Time management. Elmarie agrees with fear. All right. Awesome. Being unprepared. Congruency of speaking and the slides. Thank you, Liam. The attention of the group. Awesome. All right. Having looked into it, I think fear is one of the things that we are looking into, and interestingly, I have something to talk about relating to fear because it is emanating what will then be the basis of the challenges that we find a lot of times when it comes to business presentation. It has been said, it has been noted that we are facing a big challenge where people would rather be in the coffin than be the person who is presenting the eulogy. And it's a general consensus across the globe. And as such, with this, I hope you will be able to identify and look back and almost identify what is the foundation of this fear. In my experience, I've learned that our fear of business presentations, presenting or public speaking or communicating at any stage in time comes as a source of three main elements. The first one, the uncertainty of the outcome. You're not so sure, you're not so clear, you're not certain what the outcome would be. Will people be happy with my presentation? Will people love what I have to say? Will people learn something? Will people enjoy what I have to come through? So I'm hoping that from here on, we will be able to follow through with the conversation. The second element that I would love to bring to your attention relating to fear is that you then have an uncertainty of the outcome. When we talk of uncertainty of the outcome, this is where you're not so sure how to structure it. Should you start with the end? Should you start with the beginning of where it really started, or should you present the end in mind? And as you look into that, you look into something we call the structure that can come to the part. So if you're not so sure how to get to something, it is relevant as something that can form the basis of our fear of business presentations. A lot of times I usually love to use the analogy of it's almost like you're going to somewhere new, a new location. And if you're not so sure of the directions to that place, which is the structure and presentation, you are likely to be fearful of what is to come. The third element that comes in is uncertainty of how it will be received. So this is the audience side of things. Now we're looking into the audience. How is the audience going to be like? And those if you look into it, this is where many of you, if you have done presentations or if you've been to a course before, you may have heard of the element of know your audience. And this essentially would love to bring you to the aspects of understanding what kind of an audience are you dealing with? How can you build rapport with them? And how can you connect and make an impact? So I would like to take you through some of this, and this is the basis of what we'll cover in this session, and hopefully I'll be able to answer any other questions that you may have that I may not cover in this presentation and be of use. Happiness. Yes. Awesome. Awesome. Having said that, I would like you to think about the first element. Let's talk about purpose. Why is it necessary to have purpose in a presentation? And why should we always have a purpose for every time we come up with a speech or a presentation? A lot of us, you would find that every time we speak, there's certain elements that we want to communicate. Now, what we've got to remember is the single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place. Simply put, you think you've communicated something, but people get something totally different. This is very common with us in communication, especially with different cultures, different backgrounds. The diversity of it makes it a complex matter to address. And as such, you would find that in many places, I usually bring the element of being clear with your purpose. And if you notice that in some presentations that you do, you then tend to come up with the phrase, what I was trying to say was, or what I meant to say is, you ideally may not have focused enough on the purpose that you need to look into. I do this whenever I'm coming up with training, whenever I have to deliver a keynote presentation, or whenever I have to just give a speech at a special occasion. I always follow this structure, and I hope you too may find this useful, which is why I've recommended in this case, I hope you've got a notepad by your side as I hopefully will take you through the process of what it is. So let's assume you've just been asked to come up with a presentation, or you've been asked to present or give a keynote or speak at a family gathering. What steps are you going to take? Step number one is to come up or to identify your purpose. This means this is where you're going to learn that there are two types of purpose. The first one is called a general purpose. A general purpose, as it selfly says, it is something that we can consider as something that can be known as a main purpose, your main aim, your main goal. What is your main goal in presenting? What are you really standing up to do? And we'll learn that the second element is what we call a specific purpose. What is your specific? Yes, you've got your main aim, but how do you intend to get to that main aim? What exactly are you pinpointing? How are you going to hit the nail on the head? And this is what we call a specific purpose. So knowing that there are these two types of purposes, you've got the general purpose, which is the main aim, the broader main aim, and the specific purpose, it's exactly what you want. It's specific. And if you're able to identify that, I do believe that is the basis. So let's delve deep into understanding what a general purpose is. So a general purpose, every time we speak, be it at a function, at a funeral, at anyway, any time we speak, even in a relationship, it's either you are inspiring or motivating or any of the synonyms you love. It's either you're persuading or selling, any of the synonyms you love. It's either you're entertaining or you are informing or lecturing or teaching. Any presentation you make, think of any presentation you've had, it had one main purpose. It is either it inspires or motivates, it either it persuades or it's selling, it's either it's entertaining or it is informing. If I were to ask you, and I'm going to ask you to type in the chat box there, what do you think the State of the Nation Address's main purpose is? What do you think the State of the Nation's Address main purpose is? The SONA. What is the main purpose of a SONA? Please type it in. I'll be looking forward to your responses. To inspire, to inform the nation. All right, loving the contributions, and to persuade, beautiful. Thank you for those contributions. All right, so the main purpose of the State of the Nation, it is actually to inform. It is to inform the nation of the current status, the state of the nation. If we were to look into an example of Trevor Noah, what would you think Trevor Noah's main purpose is? Trevor Noah, for those that don't know him, he is a popular or worldwide comedian. What is his main purpose? What do you think his main purpose is? It is definitely to entertain. Yes, that is so. And if you're a salesperson, what is your main purpose generally when you're presenting? If you're a salesperson, if you're in marketing, it is to sell. So take a look at it. It is to sell or persuade. Definitely correct. So what are we saying? We are saying every time you present, you've got a specific purpose, a specific main purpose. I mean, sorry, I think I should avoid the specific side of this. You've got a clear main objective or a clear main general purpose. What are we trying to do? We want you to zone in on what you want to achieve at the end of your presentation. And how do you get to that? It is by identifying your main purpose. Now, if I were to ask you, what happens in Parliament? A lot of you, for the laugh of it, might tell me Parliament sits, every Parliament sitting is an entertainment period. That could be so, but their main purpose there is to inform us about what is happening. But in that very same vein, what you will find is in any presentation or in many of the presentation, despite that your main purpose might be to inform, there is elements of inspiration. We speak of leaders that inspire and motivate. We ask our engagement. Sometimes we find that you have met a salesperson who is extremely funny, or you've met a salesperson who really enlightens you. That does not take away from your main purpose. I'm one person who loves photographs and ensuring that anything that is worth remembering is captured. And for example, I always say, if you've got one of the latest phones, it's got that feature called a portrait mode. If you look at a portrait mode, it focuses, it zones in on one specific or one element, right? And the rest blurs out. The same thing with your main purpose. Your main purpose as a leader might be to inform the nation of what is currently happening. But it does not necessarily mean you won't have elements of some persuasion in that presentation. It doesn't necessarily mean you won't have some elements of information. It won't necessarily mean you won't have some elements of entertainment. What it simply means is the majority or the focus of your presentation is to inform, persuade, entertain, or to inspire. And that simply gets us to understand the impact of a general purpose. Talking to the traveling side of things, it's usually the easiest way to share and make you possibly get the crux of this. We're looking into, say you want to get to Cape Town. Cape Town is your main purpose. It does not mean along the way you will not pass by Bloemfontein, you will not pass by Kimberley or any other cities. It simply means your end goal, your end aim is to get to Cape Town. Similarly, if you're a motivational speaker, your main aim is to leave the audience motivated at the end of the day. But that does not necessarily mean you will not then have entertained, you will not inform them about something new, you will not possibly persuade them to think something different. Take Trevor Noah, for example. If you've watched a number of Trevor Noah series, sometimes, and in between his jokes and laughter and all the humor, we find out that he actually enlightens us about certain situations that we may not have thought about at the very beginning or at the core of things. So it is something that may be essential to look into and remind ourselves of. That is generally the main purpose. So I'll be interested to know, if you were to prepare a presentation, say if you've got a presentation coming up, what would your main purpose be? If you do presentation often, what is your main purpose? What is it that you use as your main purpose? I'd like you to write it down at this stage. What's your main purpose? And type it in, please. It is to motivate. Thank you, Bester. It is to inform. Thank you, Johan. To inspire. Beautiful. I love it. And I want to remind you and echo that your main purpose is just one word. When you're asked, what's your general purpose? It is just that one word. Is it to persuade? Is it to inspire? Is it to entertain? Is it to inform? Resist the temptation to inform and inspire, to entertain and to persuade. You can only have one main purpose. Follow one course until successful. Focus on one main element. Having said that, you now have your general purpose. Let's now move out and learn about the specific purpose. Now, your specific purpose, as it says, it's specific. It is zoned in on one element, something that you want to be clear on. An example, and as it is always recommended, it is something that if you write it down, it ideally is succinct enough to be 10 words or less. Now, your specific purpose is, what do you want your audience to do, to feel, to say, or to see after listening to your presentation? What do you want your audience to do, feel, say, or see, or think after listening to your presentation? That's a question. What do you want your audience to do, feel, see, or say after listening to your presentation? And this is where we really look into the concept or the connotation of so what? So what? Why should I be listening to you? Why should I be engaging with you? Why should I be relating to what you've got to say? And if you get to a point where you're clear on that, you are likely able to now have a focused element. Someone earlier shared that time management in presentation is a big challenge. Or is a challenge, maybe I'm exaggerating. Just understanding this aspect will help you streamline your presentation to remove any peripheries that may not be necessary in your presentation to make an impact. So you want to be able to identify what your specific purpose is. So what after listening to this presentation? If you were to ask me what my general purpose and specific purpose for this presentation would be, I would say my general purpose would be to inform, and then my specific purpose would be to inform the audience about how to come up with a presentation. So I want to inform the audience on how to come up with a presentation. Less than 10 words, as succinct as possible. Obviously, it can be a play of words. It could be, I want to inform the audience on how to develop a presentation, or a spectacular presentation, or an engaging presentation that can play around with words. But the key here is you are clear on what you want to do. That means You might find, or you might have gone to an event where someone says, today I'm not going to speak for long, but then they speak for 30, 40 minutes, and for 20 minutes into that presentation, they still have not started on speaking about why they were asked to speak. So they say, just before I start speaking about, be careful of those bad habits. It is not ideal. You've got just a small moment, a small time to connect and build rapport with your audience. So you want to make sure that your opening is right into it. Do not give people what they did not pay for. Do not make your audience pay for other things that are happening in your mind. Again, and a big thing is, do not make your audience be the outlet of you trying to ease your comfort in speaking to them. And this is also essential when we're speaking online or virtually. Avoid things like, can people hear me? Can you see me? As you're opening to your presentation. And I'll share a little bit later on what you could do to avoid those hiccups when you're speaking online or virtually. In person, avoid the likes of the peripheries, and we call them unpleasant pleasantries. And greetings to everyone. I hope you had a great lunch, and so forth and so forth. That is not your role as a presenter or as a speaker. Your role is to present. It is either the host or the MC or the program director to ensure that the audience has had a great lunch or the audience is feeling good. Your role is not to greet them. We call them unpleasant pleasantries, and you want to avoid those because that's not your main or specific purpose. Any questions as it is at this stage? Speaking about the general and specific purpose.
No.
No questions? Awesome. No questions. Is that said, I'm going to now go on to the next level. Now that you've identified your general purpose, please identify what your specific purpose would be. Write down something that you would consider as your specific purpose. Remember, that has to match with your general purpose. What would your specific purpose be? Anyone to sponsors? See. All right, I'll address that shortly. All right, so just to clarify that, in this case, when you talk of the specific purpose, I want you to answer the questions that I have there, or the question that I have there. What do you want the audience to see, to do, to feel, or to say after listening to your presentation? For example, you could say, I want my audience to feel that they are the world's greatest. So your specific purpose, or your purpose in this presentation would be to inspire the audience to feel like the world's greatest. If you want, I want to persuade this audience to buy my clothing. I want to persuade, or I want to entertain these people to say something good about Trevor Noah. I want to inform people about the COVID-19 lockdown restrictions. Be clear. So it's not right. You want to say that they understand this. You want to inform them so that they can say that they understand your topic better. So all these elements are elements that you could use. So you simply want to answer the question, so what, after listening to your presentation. If you're a salesperson, you want that action to happen. You want to close the sale. So what are you going to be doing? You want to be able to identify those. So that is partly what you're looking into when you're dealing with the general and specific purpose. You know you've gotten it right if you combine your general purpose and your specific purpose together, and they make a complete sentence. You know that you've got a clear purpose, if your general purpose and your specific purpose make a complete sentence that is clear. And I'll give you an example as we go on to the next element. With that, let's look into how now do we put it into the structure? How do we develop a structure into our presentations? Remember, we spoke about the three main sources of fear, which is what we're addressing in here. We'd say the very first element is we're not clear of the outcome, the purpose. What is it that we want to achieve? Now that we're sure that you've got an idea of what it is that you want to achieve by identifying your general purpose and your specific purpose, let's talk of the structure. And when we look into the structure, there's a golden rule that we appreciate as an audience. The power of three, the ABC, the 1, 2, 3, the XYZ, the ETC. What is that? It shares with us that psychologically, we are able to remember things better in threes, in multiples of three. So that allows us to be able to stay in the mindset of our audience. Remember earlier I mentioned that the single biggest challenge with communication is the illusion that it has taken place. You don't want to create additional illusions over and above what people have in mind. Right now, as it is, as I'm presenting, especially when it's online, you must be careful of information overload. Information overload is where I dump everything to you at one go. I must be cognizant that there are 16 other things that are happening in the background of your mind that you don't want to be cluttered against. So I have to compete for the 51% attention of your mind so that you can gather and grasp at least 80% of what I have to share. And to help us with that, I have to remember, you've got to apply the golden power of three. This is why, this is why I spoke on the three elements that we're going to look into when we talk about the three sources of fear. But how does the golden rule or the power of three apply? The first thing is now, what you're going to do is, if you're now building structure into your presentation, we're going to do something smallish like a mind map. And this is how it goes. At the center of your page or at the center of your writing notepad, you're going to write your specific purpose. Now, you're not going to write specific purpose, you're going to write what your specific purpose is. In this case, you could write anything. In my case, my specific purpose is in full, it is to persuade an audience to wear glasses. I want to persuade each one of you to wear glasses. That's my specific purpose. Already, you can tell the aim of this, at the end of this presentation for this part of this, I want to persuade you as an audience to wear glasses. So I'm going to write in that space, in that circle, persuade them to wear glasses. The first element is what fact supports the specific purpose that I want to give. Now, as a presenter, your very first challenge is to build credibility. Now, a lot of us try and want to build credibility by the titles we have, but that has proven not to be good enough because anyone can say anything about themselves. Anyone can wake up and tell us that they are most hardworking, they have survived all odds, and so forth and so forth. So you want to overcome that hurdle of ensuring that you build credibility with your audience. And where does credibility come from? It's from something that we can prove. So what fact supports what you're about to share with us today? And avoid building credibility with certain things that do not relate to what it is that you're looking into. A lot of times you will learn that politicians are quite good at that, and it's something called anaphora that we will look into when we look into the bigger scheme of presentations. But let's look at, in this specific vein, what fact supports what you're sharing? In my case, according to the Forbes magazine of August 2019, there is a research that shows that 80% of people who were studied globally are considered intelligent if they wear glasses. Research, according to Forbes magazine, August 2019 issue, says research done globally suggests that 80% of people who wear glasses are considered intelligent. Now, I want to ask you a question. Would you believe me if I said, according to Daily Sun or Daily Skinner, 80% of people who wear glasses are considered intelligent? Would you believe me? Yes or no on the chat box? I'll be interested. Nope. Nope. No, no, no. Right. Why is that so? You want to build credibility. Now, again, speak to the audience. This is a business presentation. Do your research right. Don't just go onto any website on the internet and come and give us a statistic. Give us a reputable source so that we can build credibility and align that credibility with you. Remember, we want to trust you as a speaking expert. You are on the stage. You are the one who's presenting. So we want to trust what you have to say. And as such, you need to make sure that you are aligning yourself with the credible. Birds of the same feathers flock together. So if you go on to Daily Sun and give us an example from Daily Sun, we might perceive you as something else. Despite that Daily Sun could be right, the fact that it is coming from them and they're not considered as a credible source in the business world, you might not believe them. But let's assume it was gossip. Perhaps we might consider believing that. So you want to ensure that there is that form of credibility and you want to align yourself as such. The same thing comes into if I told you that businesses in South Africa are going to bloom, and I give you that it's going to bloom after this pandemic is over. And this research was conducted in North America, South America, and in the British. Would you really believe that? Research done in North America, South America, and Britain says that businesses in South Africa will bloom after this. Likely not again. Why? Because there is a geographical difference. There is no relation. There is no relevance. So you also want to try and bring the relevance here. Tell me that according to Business Insider and the research done in the Southern African markets from businesses in Johannesburg, Pretoria, Cape Town, Durban, it suggests that this is what will happen. Now, what you've done is you've brought in the relevance to this. So think along those lines. So that's where we talk of the factuals and the fact that supports this. The second element is, yes, we can read everything that we want on the internet, but why you specifically? Now we want to build what we call emotional containers. Remember, the emotional brain is 9 times faster than the logical brain. It is 90% faster than the logical brain. This is why we've got things like impulse buying, impulse decision making. Emotions carry a lot of weight in persuasion. And when I'm looking into persuasion, I need to make sure that the emotion is beefed up very well. And what do I do? In this case, I will come down. Remember, my specific purpose is to persuade you to wear glasses. I will come and say, you know what? If I think of this, I recall back in school or back in tertiary, our top 10 in our stream, all of them wore glasses, or at least 9 of them wore glasses. And I don't remember anyone who was in the bottom 10 having any glasses. Wait, that's not all. In my family, I know the 3 uncles that are intelligent, that are smart, that are doctors, that are actuarial scientists, that are researchers, they all wear glasses. It is just that one other uncle who does not wear glasses, who right now is living under my father's roof. Now, what have I done? I've given you my personal reference to this. And as I give you my personal reference to this, as I give you my experience in this, or my credentials, what I know, what I've experienced about this, I'm challenging you to look back into your high school or your tertiary school, and you're now trying to think, in that high school, in that tertiary, did we have people who wore glasses in the bottom 10? In fact, you're now trying to remember remembering yourself calling them nerds. Similarly, I've also taken you to your family setup and trying to identify if any of the not so smart people in your family actually wear glasses, and then you are likely to agree with me. Now, what is it that I'm doing here? I'm giving you my personal experience, my personal opinion. And this comes again in business presentation. When you have done a research topic, you don't want to share with us everything that Wikipedia says. We might as well go and read it there. Come and give us your opinion, your intelligent, your smart, your analytical opinion of the situation. We want to know your experience. Do your own experiential research on this to say, I've experienced this in our department, in our space. When we look into this matter, this is what it says. This is how it relates. So you want to give us your credentials on this. What makes you the rightful person to speak about this topic? That is what you're answering there when we talk of the credentials or the testimony that you've got to share. What makes you be the best person to tell us what you're about to tell us, right? So you want to be clear on that. And then the third element is what's in it for me. Bear in mind that me is the audience. Remember, when you're presenting, it's not about you, the presenter, it's about the audience. So the audience is asking you, the presenter, what's in it for me? In my case, remember, I'm persuading you to wear glasses. What's in it for you? If you want to be considered smart, if you want to be considered intelligent, I suggest you go to your local eye store where you can get your glasses so that you can be considered intelligent. That's what's in it for you. If you want to be considered intelligent in your professional space, then I suggest you go and buy a pair of glasses. Remember, my specific purpose is to persuade you to buy a pair of glasses. And from then on, this reinforcement, the last part, is where we almost call it a summary. Remember, 80% of, according to Forbes, 80% of people who wear glasses are considered intelligent. I have experienced it at home, in school, and at work. People who wear glasses are really intelligent. So if you want to be considered intelligent, I suggest you go and buy a pair of glasses. Out of interest, how many of you would be persuaded to go and buy a pair of glasses, or would consider buying a pair of glasses? Yes. Great. Yes. Beautiful, right. So a number of us would consider buying a pair of glasses, and that is exactly what we're talking about. We want you to look into this. Now, the last part there of reinforcement, I need to emphasize that you are reinforcing what you have shared. A lot of us in our summary or in our conclusion, we have this tendency of bringing up new material. That is not the purpose of a summary. The purpose of a summary is to reinforce what you've already shared and make sure that no one misses out on anything. You want to close the cell. So you want to remind this person that logically, this makes sense, which is point number one. Emotionally or experientially, this makes sense. You've fed that. And then number three, which point 2 and 3 really focus on, is the emotional appeal. You want to make sure that it is there. If I can give an example around this for a presenter that you know, if I say, make America great again, who do you think of? If I say, make America great again, who do you think of? Please type it in. Trump, Donald Trump. Right. That was Donald Trump's specific purpose, right? He wanted to persuade the Americans to make America great again. So what other option can you use into this presentation style? So you don't always have to, this is not a recipe. So it doesn't mean if you don't use this approach, you won't get it right. It simply means this is the approach, this is one way of making it work. What we want you to do is to focus on the structure. So What did Donald Trump promise to do? So one of the things that he promised to do, he was going to build a wall between Mexico and China and America, or China and so forth. He was going to build a wall. Why? So that he can avoid any foreign transit in between the countries. He was going to chase all foreigners away so that he can make America great again by ensuring that there's employment for the locals. He was going to make America great again by increasing import taxes. Why? So that he could promote local trade, and local trade which would help the people become, get more employment, get more profits, and so that they could be wealthier. All these are examples of what he would do. But if you look at it, everything that he said he was going to do, it was feeding into his specific purpose. So also, when you do your alignment, you want to check if point 1 feeds into your specific purpose. Point 2 feeds into your specific purpose. Do not force it in. All right? So he's going to donate. So that's why in his presentation, he never said anything about donating to a country like South Africa or Zimbabwe or Malawi, because it was at no point going to make America great again. In many of our presentations, what we want to do there and what we find ourselves doing there, we want to say, yeah, donating to Zimbabwe or Zambia or Malawi or whatever case will make America great again because it will make it look good, and now you are extending or you're stretching it. It's almost as though you are now reaching out to your extended family just to make your point. In this case, in you mastering the art of sticking to your purpose, you've got to remember the benefits of making sure that you are aligned to the specific purpose. So you stick to your immediate family. What are the immediate elements that speak to this? Remember, in a presentation, you don't share everything. You are not a textbook. You are not a resource book. You are there to present. And in presenting, you are just there to spark up and open up. And that is the main purpose of a presenter in presentations. Having said that, any questions with this outline, with this approach in coming up with the structure of your presentations? If none, please feel free to type none in the group so that I know that we're still together and we are following. Let to note, none, none, none. Fantastic. I hope this is valuable though. Following here, let's speak to the third element of knowing your audience. Now, in knowing your audience, there are many ways and techniques that we can look into it. I've tried to streamline it for the benefit of this masterclass to see if we can just get a head start or a clue on what it is that we're talking about. Firstly, you want to focus on understanding the audience level or knowing your audience level, because I think that's usually the greatest challenge. Now, your question is your audience level at a higher level than you? Are they at a higher level than you? Are they more knowledgeable or more intelligent than you at in terms of their education level? If so, remember, maintain your level, maintain your diction. What does this mean? If you're going to be speaking, say I'm going to be speaking to a group of scientists who are extremely intelligent in their bases, and I'm going to be sharing with them a few lessons that I learned in science whilst I was in tertiary school. Instead of going to try and cram and learn the difficult words that they used as doctorate in science, I need to maintain my level, what I'm comfortable with. Remember, you want to overcome the fear. So what it is that you're going to do is you're going to look into what is my main level. What is it that I'm comfortable to speak at? You want to do this so that if any time any question comes at your level, you do not stammer or you do not get tripped off because you are not well versed in what you are talking about. So you want to show comfort and confidence in what you already know, and this is why I say maintain your level. If your audience is at a lower knowledge level than you, by all means, please come down to their level. If your audience is at a lower level than you, by all means, please come down to their level. And this means if you are going to be speaking to a few, in fact, the best example I can have, if you're going to be going to a school of a university or a tertiary institute, and you need to share with them issues relating to career guidance, please don't come and share with us the abbreviations and the terminologies that you use in the business, the UX, when you want to talk about customer experience. Please avoid those abbreviations, avoid those terms. It come down to their level. The best example I've had in trying to get people to learn this or to understand this was a marketing manager who at a farmers or agricultural event was now tasked to speak to farmers about about something, or to speak to them. And they decided to speak about branding. And they were going on talking about brand psychology and brand power and brand elements. And what do you think the farmers did? The only thing that the farmers understand when it comes to branding is the branding of their cows and cattle and making sure that they are identifiable as them. So what had happened is you lost the rapport, you lost the engagement, and this is what we need to be careful of. So if you're speaking at an audience that is at a lower level than you, come down to their level. But there are cases where you're unsure of your audience level before the presentation. Say you're asked to give a keynote or a presentation at a specific place and you're not sure of their level before the presentation. Please either ask in advance or have coffee or engage in a conversation with them to identify their level of contribution or their level of understanding. And by so doing, you would be able to then be at a position to understand what it is that they may know or they may not know. If you're unsure of them and you're already speaking, or you're already getting up onto stage to start to speak, this is where, with experience, you use something that we call engagement techniques to gauge interest or knowledge. So for example, if I'm going to be speaking about the 7 wonders of the world and I'm going to be focusing on the Victoria Falls, if it's in a live audience, this is where I'll be like, raise your hands if you've ever been to the Victoria Falls. By knowing or by learning how many people raise their hands, I can then tell the level of knowledge that they might have of the Vic Falls, or if they at least know about the Vic Falls. Raise your hand if you have any knowledge about presentations, or if you've done presentations, your experience in presentation. Then I can know. That you can use to gauge technique and you can weave around it. But I always suggest that this technique or of using engagement techniques needs to be at a position when you are flexible and you know how to maneuver. Because if, let's assume you get all hands up, you now need to notch up your presentation about what you're going to share. Or if you don't get any hands, you now need to readjust your presentation to make it as basic or as understandable as possible. Any questions relating to knowing your audience? If none, feel free to type none so I can I'm sure that we are clear and we are going. Great, okay. I assume the none means you're going good, it is easy to follow and understand. Then the last part that I want to check in there is really about how you then put all this into practice when it's online presentation or when you're presenting virtually. The first thing to remember is to always log in early. Remember earlier I said you don't want to start your presentation by hello, hello, can anybody hear me? Am I audible enough? Is my sound good? And so forth and so forth. You want to avoid that. And this is where you then log in early. If your presentation is scheduled to be at 10 and you are presenting, you're the first presenter, try and log in, let's say at 9:30, and check and make sure that you double check. I personally, even for this, even though I've been doing them daily, I've been logging in earlier at around about 9 a.m. to just check that all is well, my internet connection is stable, and then I can continue. There are times where you can't control things like the internet challenges, but you can try and minimize that risk by knowing early on. Another well that you could consider is using an Ethernet cable over Wi-Fi. I have learned this technique. You use your cable over Wi-Fi because it has a stronger stronger bandwidth to take over. So you are likely to be more, or you're likely to be reliable or more stable with your connectivity if you're connecting via cable over Wi-Fi. So think along those lines. Third, avoid videos. Try by all means to avoid videos online, not just because of your own internet connection, but even for the audience. Remember, you don't want to create that lag where the video is going, my name is Andrew, and then you miss out on the value or the content that you're sharing. So avoid the internet, avoid videos as much as possible, and allow for in-conversation breaks, not only for you to regather your thoughts and re-energize, but pauses are essential in getting people to digest what you're sharing and looking into this. This also coupled with the aim or the element of speaking as slowly as possible to get people to gauge in or to look into it. This can be unpacked to vocal variety and how you do this online, and that is part and parcel of it. And then avoid background noise. This is noises of something that's happening where you find something going, and then that can be very disruptive and can really bother a lot of people in the space. And this is usually found so for people who are working from home, or for those that do this professionally, if you find yourself into that space, you want to try and consider a situation where you look into what we would call a soundproofed room or study room, for those that have the opportunity to build one. Or if you're going to rent out a space where you're going to have this virtual meeting, you also want to find a soundproof space where you can be in. And last but not least, also consider, and I'll try and demonstrate this by stopping my sharing so that you can see me. Again, with your background, I assume everyone can see me. Now, you want to have a stable stand for your video if you're going to be showing yourself on video. So you don't want something that you're going to be holding like this or anything. It just makes a greater interruption. And in so doing, you also want to ensure by all means that you are looking into the camera. So at this point in time, if you're looking into your screen, I am looking into the camera. It appears as though I'm looking at you. But when you are looking into your screen, you can notice that there is disengagement, there is a lack of understanding, a lack of rapport. So you take away all that rapport. So you also don't want to be looking at in that space. You want to be focused on what is happening at that point in time. And this is all that I have to share for you for today. I hope this was valuable. I hope you learned something new, and I hope this sparks your interest into learning more about the presentation skills in a full game. Remember, like we say, you cannot learn how to swim by reading a book. You've got to dive into that pool and practice those strokes. Similarly, I strongly believe you cannot learn how to present by reading just a book or by me sharing with you. You've got to try it a couple of times, feel the unnerving elements that come about, feel the challenges, and then you might make it work. I hope this was valuable, and I'll allow for any questions at this stage. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions should you have any. If none, feel free to type in none, and that is also acceptable.
Andrew?